remind myself with my rod. Wait.
Long distances, you got to get longer.
Big chopper like that.
I don't have anything interesting to tell you I haven't told you for the last 9 years. Maurice already thinks I'm lying. Okay. So, except for about the foods. So the thing is that what we've done over the last number of years that's been much better than me having opinions about stuff just on my own is that let's just talk about whatever it is you want to talk about.
I'd like to know what the magic fly is.
Magic fly. Yes.
Where are the drinks?
Oh, stop going now.
The magic fly is dynamite, for the record. It works every time.
Right. What's the biggest mistake?
I mean, and I don't mean this to be flip. The biggest problem I see is that people don't spend enough time on the water. Now, I was once married and understand the reality of the situation. Kids are a burden, I think is the word I'd like to use. When I traveled a lot to do a lot of fly fishing out west, which is when I was in college and for the number of years afterwards before I was forced to get a job. Terrible, very sad time actually. The job part. But that I could go to the Henry's Fork and spend a week because a week meant nothing to me. I had nothing but free time. And so if the first 3 or 4 days were just exploring and learning and trying to figuring it out, I had all the time in the world to do it, But most of the people who come here have a 48-hour window to try to get it right. The biggest mistake that I see people make in fly fishing in general is thinking that they know stuff, and it's literally gotten to the point, and I'm very, very lucky. I don't really feel the need to be right? I just want you guys to buy stuff. I already know from my experience here that you'll then catch less fish, right?
Yeah. Because where we come from, where Paul and I come from, there's only one thing hatching at a time, so you pretty much fish that in, and you know that you're doing the right thing. Here, it's like, when do I switch it?
And I remember he came home one day and I said, how was the fishing? And he said it was good. And I said, what were they eating? Or no, what was hatching? And he says, I'm not really sure. And I said, well, what were they eating? And he said, 18 adders, right? And I said, well, was there some small bug coming off? He says, well, that's what I decided to feed him. Now, he was that good.
Jonas, is that like last night at 2, I went home with a 10, and at 10 I woke up with a 2? Is that...
And I got to the stream and I looked over the edge and there was big yellow sulfurs coming off, like the 12s, right? Which we get for about 5 days. And I thought, and the fish were already on them, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning. I thought, well, this is going to be the easiest day of guiding I've ever had, right? I know what's going on, right? And the fish are eating it, and I have it in my box. And if you go to Popatty and just work your way up past Love's Pool, that's where you wind up. And we had worked our way all the way back up to that same spot where we were, where the fish was rising, and the fish was still rising. So I got his rod, and I went out, and I did exactly what we were talking about. Now, I am by no means a great fisherman, and I do not claim to be a great fisherman, but I made a good cast. The line drove down into the water, the leader turned over, the fly flopped into spot, I got a good, nice drag-free drift, fish came up and ate it, and I set the hook. I'm almost never fishing 2 flies in the same family, okay? So I might be throwing March Brown Nymph, Sulfur Nymph Trailer right now, okay? Green Drake Nymph, Sulfur Nymph Trailer, okay? The exception to that is the Wiggle Nymph. If you're going to be fishing the Wiggle Nymph that we were looking at today, you actually tie your trailer off the front hook on the Wiggle. The answer for me is that the upper fly is usually something I have a lot of confidence in. Believing in what you're doing enough to make enough casts till you get 20 or 30 drag-free drifts over the fish. It might look like you're getting 20 great drifts, but you might have only had 2. And if the fish had just fed or wasn't about to feed or whatever, rhythm and timing being a whole separate issue, if there are fish rising all around me, I'm going to show them all the fly once, assuming that the next fish that rose is way dumber than the previous fish that rose. And John's first job when he's out nymph fishing is to try to define at what depth in the water column the fish are consistently feeding. Are they fishing the bottom third, the top third, or the middle third? Let's say we're taking water table height deep, okay? But the rocks, the average size of the rocks is coming up to here, okay? So let's say that the table height is 30 inches, right? And the average rock height is 15 inches, okay? I'm going to set my dropper at about 18 inches, right? Just enough so that it's getting to the top of the rocks, allowing for a little bit of drag. If that is true, the green drakes are going to start at approximately 10 a.m. and they are going to go all day long until about 7:30, 8 p.m. and then it is going to be over, okay? This is important. Save yourself the waiting till after dark for something to go boom. It's not going to happen. If the hatch, let's assume that the constant in the equation is the number of bugs that are going to hatch in the day. If that is 10 million, okay, whether they start at 10 a.m. and are done by 8 p.m., or whether they start at 8:30 and are done by 9:15, roughly the same number of bugs are going to come off. But if they already happened all day, at 8 o'clock it'll die off as opposed to get good. The drakes will probably run, probably the head of the hatch will be about a mile upstream of Cherry Run, and you'll probably start seeing a good number of coffin flies around the Weikert area. As far as the hatch goes, it's almost always males. Tonight was the first females I saw in Coburn since it started. Right? It's almost always the males that come off first, and as soon as they can, they're going to turn into coffin flies. You'll see coffin flies tomorrow night in Coburn. And the reason why is because, not a lot of them, but just enough, some of them. The reason why is because as soon as the females start to emerge, the males have a reason to be sexually active. So they're going to go become sexually active adults as fast as possible, hoping that some chick wants to have sex with them.
So Weikert would be the place to be tomorrow.
How many of you have ever fished over the green drake before? Yeah, so that's not a very high percentage of it. I highly recommend you go to the middle of the whole deal, right? And experience the majesty that is the green drake, and then come back to my shop and tell me how you didn't catch any fish, okay? If you wear glasses, a variety of bugs have crawled behind them and tried to have sex with your eyes, okay? And that while you're sitting there, they're thumping into the side of your head trying to fly upstream. That's when it's, the local belief is that the best green drake pattern is a sulfur pattern, okay? Now, my best fly that I break the hatch with is a giant stonefly. When you're standing there and you're watching the wave of green drakes go by, what happens is there's one fly flying the wrong way in a confused pattern that looks like one of those two-bladed helicopters, right? And he's doing this, okay? And that's your giant stonefly coming off. So a big giant stonefly is a great hatch breaker. Predominantly, you're going to be looking at sulfurs in a 16 yellow during the day, orange at night. Should get a good spinner fall there around 5 o'clock. You're going to have some caddis. You're going to have a lot of crane flies. There's still a tremendous blue quill hatch going on over there. Well, if the weather is right, they're going to start hatching at 10 o'clock in the morning. You may be able to fish dries all day. The little sulfur nymphs have been definitely working over there, the orange colored ones. Fish them through the riffles, right? That's really where they've been most effective. Tons. The opportunity for me to just go tonight and sit by the creek and watch a friend of mine fish over green drakes is the greatest thing in the world. And if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't get to do it.
Appreciate it, Joe.